Hello and welcome to May, my favorite month of the year. I am very, very excited for this. I love May and I have not had or contributed into a readathon probably in like 8 or 9 months when I did the middle grade magic readathon, and before that I don't even know when was the last time. So I am super excited to be here. I am going to be participating lightly in several readathons and just really enjoying May and the beautiful weather. You know, all through winter it is so cold in Canada and then it gets blistering hot, so we have to enjoy May when it's like that perfect 20-some degree weather where you just feel alive and happy and the trees are blooming and everything is wonderful, and it just makes me so happy. The main readathons I'm going to be participating in this month is Montgomery May, Spoonie Readathon, Misery May, and Mashed Potato May. So lots of Mays, and I'll jump in with Kilmeny of the Orchard. This is a book by Lucy Maud Montgomery. Lucy Maud Montgomery is one of my favorite authors of all time, and she has a shine several places in there, and that is one of them. Kilmeny is actually one of the books that I do not own, but it was one of the first that I really wanted to read. It follows a disabled main character, which is one of the reasons why I'm doing it this month, because it is the group read, as well as a lesser known book, as well as, you know, obviously goes in with the Spoonie Readathon and a classic literature book. So I'm really excited for this. This looks at this wealthy, kind of spoiled guy who's living large, and then they're like, why don't you become a substitute teacher on Prince Edward Island, which is where Lucy Maud Montgomery is from. And he was like, sure, I'll do that. And then he meets this woman and is like, I'm in love with her. Her name is Kilmeny, and she's primarily known for not being able to speak and also for scandalousness around her birth. And I'm really, really excited for this. It kind of reminds me of Blue Castle. Like, we have this outsider who's a little rougher than like the main people in the town, and then you also have this woman who is, you know, not as well received or liked because of something that she can't really control in her life. And I'm really excited to see this. I really hope Lucy Maud Montgomery does not do it dirty with disability representation, because I love her and I need this to be good. But yeah, if I have time and stuff like that, I would love to read many of them books. I take a slow reach in reading her books because I own a lot of them and stuff like that, but whenever I open a chapter of her book and start reading it, I feel just so happy, and I want to have that happiness for the first time for a long time. The next author I'm going to talk about is also a Canadian. Her name is Mona Awad, and she also wrote the book All's Well. This is a play by Shakespeare that I never really liked, and then I saw it portrayed in Stratford last year, and it was phenomenal. And I watched it again with my roommate because I was like, this is so good, and she fell in love with it and it was just as good. So I'm so excited because this is a book about her trying to have it presented at her college. I believe she's a professor and she's trying to get it presented, and no one really likes the play, no one really wants the play, but it really, really matters to her. She also has chronic pain and stuff like this, and it also has some dark academia, like secrets, tantalizing things like this. I'm also currently really tempted because Mona Awad is speaking at the Stratford Festival this summer, as well as Margaret Atwood and Emma Donoghue, and I'm just like, there's like no student pricing for these tickets or something like that, and I really want to see them, but you know, they're famous authors, so they're expensive, and I'm just currently staring at it being like, they're talking about gothic literature, her and Margaret Atwood, like, when will I have another chance of this? But also, I can't be frivolous. I'm really excited for this book. I love that it has chronic pain representation, which is something that I deal with in my own life. I love that it's based on Shakespeare and has some dark academia vibes. I think it's just going to be altogether a really good book. The next book that I'm going to be reading is Paradise Lost by John Milton. I really didn't know this, but John Milton was a blind poet. He became blind throughout his life. It was probably through something that would have been preventable today, but because of things at the time, he lost his entire sight in his middle age. And this book was written entirely when he was blind and stuff, and it is the original bad boy book because it is portraying this guy, Satan, as a good guy who's just like sad that his dad doesn't love him. So this is kind of a forward thing to the Byronic hero. I think it came out in 1667. I'm really excited for it. I really love Frankenstein and many things that took inspiration from this poem, so I've been excited to read it for a little while. And then we have Easy Beauty by Chloe Cooper Jones. This is a book about disability and difference in body. She has a genetic issue that makes her smaller in stature, as well as having chronic pain. The book, I believe, begins with she's standing at a bar listening to two people debate whether she deserves living. And obviously my chronic pain and disability does not represent quite as visibly as hers, but this is something that you definitely hear and you sit. I heard people, only a few days ago, I was sitting in a circle and just listening to people talk about like, what is the purpose of life if you can't do things? And I was just sitting there being like, I've been really, really excited for this book ever since I heard about it on Jen Campbell's channel, and I've just been super excited to read it. It's The Sound of a Wild Snail Eating. This is a book that I actually started way back in last May, surprisingly in a hospital, because, you know, it's when you should read a book about chronic pain decline and disability and all of these things, and it follows the author's story. She's also a memoir about her becoming chronically ill and being bedridden, and then during this time her friend just brings her a snail and is like, you'll enjoy this, right? And she's like unable to like move from bed, and all she does is like stare at this snail, and it is so wonderfully written. I like read the beginning of it so many times that I like never continued. You know, you become just like so encapsulated by a book that you forget to read the whole book. So I'm hoping, it's been a year and I still like look forward to reading the book in its completion. So ebook it away, and I'm really excited for this. Another readathon that's going on in May is the Misery May, and this is looking at the works of Thomas Hardy. You don't have to read a book by Thomas Hardy, but you know, I really like Thomas Hardy. If you're interested in like my fuller thoughts on him, I have a video going over my Victorian TBR where I kind of summarize all my thoughts about him and what I want to read in the years to go future. That's a sentence. And yeah, I have kind of two choices for here. I really want to read The Woodlanders because it's been on my TBR for a long time and it seems like really good, and I'm not going to be reading a physical book. Like, I have Jude and several of his other books on my shelves, but I'm not planning on reading a physical book probably until October. So I was like, okay, what e-audiobooks do I have from the library? And I have The Woodlanders. It's 14 hours long though, so with a lot of the books that I'm reading, I'm not sure I'm going to have a 14-hour audiobook for Thomas Hardy this month, but I do really love just the synopsis of it, which is betrayal, adultery, disillusionment, and moral compromise. Hardy. I love Hardy so much. I could also read some of his poems because I feel like that's very adequate and right for this time of year, but my other choice is Under the Greenwood Tree, and this seems like one of his earlier books and maybe happier. Who knows? I don't think any of his books are particularly happy, although I'm not saying I've never found his books particularly sad. I think I'm just like a glutton for miseries because everyone's like, I can't read Hardy, and I'm just like, they're sad, but they're not like that depressing. I don't know, they don't depress me, they just make me happy, which is what all suffering does to me. Anyways, this one is about a teacher. This one is about a young teacher and her love affair with the church's music man. So I know nothing else about it. It's definitely not one of his most popular books, but I'm interested in reading it. Probably a little more aligned with Misery May, we have The Tenant of Wildfell Hill, and this is a book by Anne Brontë. I have read several Brontë books in the times before, including Jane Eyre and Wuthering Heights, and I really love reading Brontes in spring, or Jane Austen. I just like the classic book and being able to go through. I'm a very, very slow physical reader and I annotate the heck out of these books, so I know this is going to be a long book. I know this is a very sad book. It deals with a woman arriving at a place and no one really knowing anything about her, and her having a tragic backstory that we soon learn throughout the book. I'm really, really excited to read this, and it has been the book since the beginning that I've been convinced that I'm going to love, and it's been on my TBR for probably 6 years. So the fact that I'm reading it now also means that it's a mashed potato May book, which mashed potato books are books that you keep on keeping because you think you're going to love them and you need to be at the exact right moment, and then you never read them. So it's a book that I'm going to read. Kind of also in lieu of books I've been putting off for way too long is The Namesake by Jhumpa Lahiri. This is a book that deals with intergenerational family from Calcutta to Massachusetts and their stories and stuff like that. I don't know that much more. I also know that it deals with names and how we pronounce names and etc. And I'm really, really excited. I really, really enjoyed Jhumpa Lahiri's books. Interpreter Melodies was one of my favorite books of last year, and Whereabouts was one of my favorite books of 2021. If you want to know more about Jhumpa Lahiri, I really recommend a video by Monika from Dog-Eared Musings. She made a wonderful video about her and how much she loves her and like kind of where she started and her journey of it. And I think that it just gives a really beautiful synopsis of why she is such a wonderful and incredible author that I know is going to be a favorite. So I'm just really excited to read all of her books. The next book I'm going to talk about is The Adventures of Amina el-Safari, and this is a book by S.A. Chakraborty. This is an author I really, really treasure and like. I really liked her books set in the City of Brass series, especially as the series went on. I really saw her mature from a debut author into an author that I could just really trust and love with all my heart. And this one looks at a retired pirate kind of going back into the game. I don't know much about it more than that, other than I'm just like really excited to read this book that features an older woman and like deals with pirates. I think the original synopsis I heard probably in like 2019 originally was Sinbad meets Ocean's 11, and I'd be like, yes, please give me that. Another series that is a continuation for me is Last Violent Call by Chloe Gong. I really, really enjoyed her books. She also has a new series called Foul Lady Fortune that I really, really enjoyed reading last year, and this is kind of a novella that put some of the events in this together. These are loose retellings of Shakespeare's plays set in 1920s and 30s Shanghai, China, and they are marvelous. Her writing is wonderful, and I really, really enjoy her books. Another book that I am excited for, I don't know, I've heard really mixed reviews, but I'm still really interested in it, and this is I Want to Die, But I Want to Eat Tteokbokki. I'm probably butchering that last book, but this is a memoir dealing with mental health and depression and the ways in which we kind of deal with it. And this is a character who is kind of narrating her life and actually uses a lot of her own therapist notes from sessions. And as someone who has a background in therapy and mental health, I think that this book is going to be super interesting, and I'm just really intrigued on the ways that it's going to talk about it, and it's quite short. Another book that is not short at all is Demon Copperhead. This is a book that has been making the rounds and just is beloved, and it has been shortlisted for the Women's Prize, and I've been reading through the books, and yeah, I am tentatively excited for this. It's very big, and I think I'm going to enjoy it. I read David Copperfield only last fall, and I felt middling about it. I liked it, I just didn't love it, and I didn't find it like that memorable. I really found the angel demon kind of aspect of like how he represented women not great, but I do think I'm interested in this. It's just very long, so it's like one of those books that I'm like, I know I want to read, but like I really wish it was like 10 hours rather than like 18 hours on audiobook or whatever it is. And then last and certainly not least, we have Femina by Janina Ramirez. This was a book that I found through Charlotte of Coynie Reads books, and if you ever want to read like good history books that are about women, like whenever I watch her videos, I like literally just open my Goodreads and I'm like, yeah, I want to read that. And this is a book that I'd heard about a while ago and like really wanted to read, and then my library just saw it and I felt so delighted. I was like, I have been wanting to read this book and be like, okay, I need to like save up and buy it and stuff, and it's gonna be so good. Anyways, so this is a book that retells the Middle Ages through the points of view of the women that are from it. I think that it's gonna have like an overarching narrative where we're like, oh, let's talk about this woman, let's talk about this woman, let's talk about this woman. And I really, really enjoy books that highlight underrepresented groups and like where they are. And I just feel like you get an idea of a period so easily through that, and then you just like want to like discover and know more, and it just really opens up this whole like wormhole of ideas and knowledge. And I really love nonfiction and history books, so I'm so excited to be reading this in May. So that's my TBR for May. I will probably lose some books, add some books, do all kinds of things. I'm not the most like, you know, on a list reading. I tend to be very mood reading, and I'm sure I will read more books that are not on this list and not read some that are on this list. However, I would love to hear what you're planning on reading in May. Any ideas? Are you participating in any of these readathons? Are you interested in any of these readathons? Because I really recommend checking them out and looking at the creators and stuff like that. I'll link all of those things in the back. And yeah, let me know what you are planning on celebrating in May. What is your favorite month of the year? Do you find more energy to read in May than you do during the winter? Or maybe you live in another place in which, you know, it's reversed and you're just going into winter, and for that reason, I'm sorry.